Welcome to the Miami Jewish Film Festival, the world's largest festival of its kind. We want to thank all of our members, sponsors, community partners, all of you film lovers, and especially our presenting sponsors, the Center for the Advancement of Jewish Education and the Greater Miami Jewish Federation, for their continued support throughout all these years. My name is Sandra Lilienthal, one of the instructors at the Center for the Advancement of Jewish Education. I am delighted to be moderating a virtual conversation with director Pedro Gorski and Milton Weintraub, executive producer, a historical consultant, and an actor, as he will share with us, from the movie Lives of Frieda Wolff, which is premiering at this year's festival. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to share our experience with you guys.
Me too.
Pedro and Milton, your movie opens at the street in which I lived for many years in Rio. Frieda Wolff was my neighbor, which is a coincidence of sorts, as neither you nor the film festival could have known that prior to inviting me to speak to you. Also, Marion Lund, who speaks a little bit in the movie, is a friend from the late 70s. And it brought me amazing memories, but also raised a question. Frieda passed away in 2008. The film came out in 2020, but obviously was started much earlier. Why did it take that long? What were the challenges that the two of you confronted in making this film?
I will start. When we first got the idea, Milton introduced me to the work of the couple, Frieda and Egon Wolff, and we decided we should travel to Rio, from São Paulo to Rio, to record Frieda. At this moment, she was 92, and Egon had passed away 1 decade before, I think. And 91. And I didn't know their story until Milton showed me like the 40 books that they researched and wrote, that he had at his house. And I was like just finishing my communications university, and I said, Milton, we should go there. How long she could wait? She's 92. And he bought the tickets for me, for him, and for Regina, his wife, who was our producer. And we went there 2 or 3 times, and we did like long interviews with Frieda, and we were very excited. 12 hours of conversation. We went to the countryside, to Vassouras, to this memorial that they built, and we show at the end of the movie. But after this, we didn't have money. Milton paid for the tickets, for the hotel, and everything. I was starting my career, and then we started our journey to find sponsorships and some kind of fund to pay for the film. And we didn't get until 5 years ago that we found some companies that accepted invest money that they could pay for tax. And we have like a cultural law in Brazil that helps filmmakers and art makers to produce their works with this company's tax. So just a few years ago, we had part of the money. So most of the time we were working and trying with our own investment. And in these last years, we also had the help of Renato Sacerdote, who is our executive producer, and Ari Gizendruk, who is our cinematographer. So we had many moments doing this movie, and we are very happy that we could finish it and and now we can share with people.
So Milton, let me ask you a question. The movie is about two journeys. It is certainly about the Wolff's journey, but it's also about your journey. How did you get involved in this? I understand you were close to the Wolffs, but when did you see that you really had a story in your hands that had to be told?
I am a collector of Jewish histories, life histories. We lost in our family more than 100 persons in Poland. They all were assassinated by the Nazis. And from the age of 2 years old till my grandfather with 102 years old, they all were killed. So I didn't have this normal experience of get a grandpa, grandma, or an old uncle. Everybody around me was young, optimist, strong, and going further. And when I met the Wolffs, I immediately identified in their own history that was a kind of different history of my side of Jewish of Poland. And they were very Yakish, very German culturally, but they broke all the links with Germany. And this, for the first moment, attracted me very much to tell their history. In another detail, they didn't have children. So nobody will tell their history. So I intend to give a voice after they passed away.
So before we talk about the amazing work that they did, I want to talk about them as people. One of the first things we notice through your movie is how much ahead of their times they were. They were living together before getting married. They actually seem to have gotten married only to please their parents. It was not important to them. Frieda was driving when it was not common for women to be driving. In what other ways do you think they were ahead of the times?
First of all, they were ready to sacrifice all the finance side of their lives. They get all the money they win with the enterprise work of 4 decades and sponsor all the research they made all over the world. They didn't get 1 penny from any institution. All they made independent, and they spend almost all the money they raised before. This is a very hard case of believing in what they said and what they do. They had a very big coherence. And this is a very hard case.
So I keep thinking about how their life story is one of changes, of radical changes, several times, not just once. I'm sure when they were growing up, they could not have imagined living in Brazil. That happened because they didn't have a choice, they had to leave. Seems that they never had a plan to write an article, let alone books. And as you mentioned, they weren't really authors. They were amazing, fantastic researchers that were
Yes.
able to gather all of this documentation. And I was thinking of the story in the movie about the report cards that were left blank in Germany, and that they mentioned that they wanted those report cards to remain blank so that people would ask questions. Do you think that at that point already there was this historian gene there, leaving it blank so that it will, I think Jewishly speaking, we create a Seder so that people will ask questions. So it seems to me that that was already in their blood, this little bug for history and for wanting the story to be told.
Yes, they broke all the connection with Germany. They were able, I asked for this to find a number, and they were able to receive indemnization from the German government. And retroactively, since 33 till the end of a career of a judge or a professor in Germany. And I found a number at that time, like $6 or $7 million they were able to receive. But as they broke all the connections, the links with Germany, they even didn't speak in German. They have a very strong accent in Portuguese, German, but they didn't speak between them with friends in German. And once I told them, I am asking you to give me a document, and I will ask in the German embassy of Brazil for the indemnization. And the money we get, we will make a shower with a helicopter in the favelas of Rio de Janeiro. $100 raining in favelas in Rio de Janeiro. And they answer me, if you go in our name to the embassy in Brazil, the place of the embassy is German territory. And if you ask in our names, it's like we are going in some piece of German territory. And we will not make it this for any amount. 5 million, 10 million, or $100 million, doesn't matter. Once they were returning from a commercial trip to Tokyo, Japan, and the plane has some problem, mechanical problem, and they stop in Frankfurt, emergency in Frankfurt. Everybody went out of the plane and they were sitting. And the commandant asked him, you must go out of the plane. No, we will not go because we don't go in German territory. They stayed 48 hours without air conditioner, service, food, nothing, until the plane was right, and then they go to the second part of the flight. So they were this detail of the white fishes was part of a big number of attitudes showing they will never reconnect to Germany. And when I went there to film in 2012, this was a very big doubt I carried on. If I must or did not go to Germany to film. But as in the year before, 2011, I went to Poland to see the concentration camps of where my family was trucidated, and the state in every detail of my family history last years in Poland. I get forced to shut in Berlin also.
It's amazing.
Yes, they were very committed to this proposal of not have contact with Germany anymore, and they follow until the end. Like
I take a professor. He's a medicine doctor, a very good friend of mine, and he asked me to introduce Frieda to him because he was in task to get all the names possible to normalize that archive. And I introduced them to Oswaldo Cruz, home of Frieda at that time. And he asked her to fill the blanks. And she said, no, I don't want to normalize the archive. And he asked her if it's possible to wait more half an hour to give the final answer at the end of the meeting. And when they went out, the couple, she said to him, he was the author of the worst half hour of her life. Frieda was very hungry. He asked why, what I make? She said, in this half hour, maybe you for a second have the conclusion that I was not decided in what I get at the first answer. I don't have any hesitation, and I never want to see you anymore.
Wow.
It was
there was no chance to complete these files.
Yes.
Pedro, why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience becoming acquainted with Frieda, becoming acquainted with Milton? I know that you had a personal relationship with him, but being really with him and learning about his story and turning him into a character in the movie.
Nice. No, Milton is a very good friend of my father. They know each other since they are, I don't know, 5 years old or a little bit more. And we were neighbors until my 25 years. We lived in the same building. And we were always together, having dinner, having fun together, and Pesach, and after Yom Kippur, and we were always together. And then one day, I was like finishing my university and starting my work with documentaries, and he mentioned this story. So that's how everything started. And we went to Rio, and I was like pretending to do a classic documentary, maybe with a voiceover, introducing their story and telling about like these 3 lives. We were very inspired by their book, which called Our 3 Lives. And in this almost 15 years that we took until starting the editing of the movie, this movie I thought in 2003, it was I was different, and I think that the movie, it should be different too. And when we went to our second season of interviews, and we started like to researching about people who had contact with them, we thought that Milton could be some kind of connection with these people. But even in this moment, we didn't decided yet that Milton would be the character of the movie, like he is. And then in the editing, with our editors, we started to talk about this possibility, and they encouraged us to take this decision. So the last interviews we did, when we went to the Jewish files at the Jewish Museum in São Paulo, we decided that Milton would take this role as character. So we put him to talk with the researcher. We made these visits for people who was colleague or friends of the Wolffs, and he was like chatting with them as a character. So this was very nice. And then we decided, like, we didn't have the link to create the narrative. So we started to making some interviews with Milton, telling the early connection he had with the couple until these last days, until his reflections after doing the movie and connecting to the days we are living now with this the danger of we are suffering in our democracies. So after the conclusion that Milton takes at the end of the movie, that almost 100 years later, after the Holocaust, we are still experiencing some similar situations. No, it's hard, and I think the way that Milton puts these conclusions in the movie, it's very strong, because we think that we learn a lot with this terrible past we had, the Jewish community had, but we are still a lot to learn, no? So somehow they are still teaching us, even they are not here anymore, but showing the Jewish presence in Brazil and the Jewish presence in America. I think they are still teaching us to understand the value of the liberty and the value of the respect for the religion. So this is very important.
The word.
Go ahead.
The word, excuse me. The word is showing all those bad signals of 1 century ago. All the red lines are turning on, and it's almost never happened in the 20th century. And this also is not a very new thing, because Brazil and United States are 2 countries that fight against the Nazis and the fascists. But at the beginning of the war, the 2 countries has a very uncertain role, a certain role in the political situation. Brazil has the biggest Nazi party outside Germany. And the United States has the second biggest Nazi party. The conventions of Nazi parties in New York, they fill the Madison Square Garden with members of the Nazi party, with all those choreographies they loved so much. So all the time is a very uncertain attitude of our governments, our political leaders. It's not very, we cannot trace the common citizen must not put their history, their destiny in their hands.
So I actually had a question to ask, and I'm going to build it on what you are saying. You mentioned, Milton, that you grew up with no family because your family had been decimated by the Holocaust. My parents were only children. My grandparents were the only ones who survived. And I was brought up in Brazil with no anti-Semitism, but I was brought up with, you always have cash, you always have a valid passport, and you always have an American visa, because you never know when you're going to have to leave again.
I do this till today.
I do it, my children, fourth generation. My children, one lives in New York. If she comes to Florida where I live, she travels with her passport, with cash, etc. So if she needs to leave, she has it, right? I wonder, you mentioned in the movie, and you too mentioned it now, that there is a rise in radicalism, fanaticism, racism all around the world, and that democracies, Western democracies, are looking more and more like Germany in the 1930s. My question is, the average American Jew did not grow up like we did. How many people in Brazil or in America today do you think have an exit strategy? And is that necessary, or as much as it looks similar, it'll never happen again?
It's not a guarantee. It's more an evidence of ignorance, a very strong ignorance in the world. People don't know and don't want to know. They don't sympathize with the subject. They are not interested. And I think that even in the Jewish communities, less than 20%, I think less than 10% are paying attention in these facts. That's why a modern conflict of Russia and Ukraine, it's like a big news. It's a history existing more than 500 years. And he still didn't finish. I feel in Poland some kind of anti-Semitism that it's like 100 years before. What more surprised me in the trip to Germany was the opposite I felt in Berlin. The new generation in Berlin, I found a completely different situation, climate. And I think that is an exception in all the world. I think that Germany instead of the problems we have, is the country that better take care of this subject with laws and behavior and education, especially the new generation. They broke a very big wall of silence and darkness when Google appeared. The instinctive first thing to do with Google, I think everybody made this experience, was to put their names, their own names in Google and make a research. And those that make this in Germany find a very terrible past of their own families. And many of them broke the relationship with that past. They didn't want to carry the weight of that pain, that responsibility. And many of them went to the opposite side to work, to make an explanation what happened, and many times to stand with Israel politically. But Germany, I think, is an exception.
Yes. We have a conflict, a personal conflict, because I'm applying for Poland passport, and we don't appreciate what German did to the Jews and the way German treats this matter until today. You know, so it's complicated, and I think that the way you raise your daughters, I think, I don't know, it's like Milton said, I don't know if in Brazil we are very worried about it, but we should. And we had many demonstrations of totalitarianism recently, and it was very curious that many people from the Jewish community were supporting these people, like supporting fascists and people who encourage kinds of methods of torture that we suffered, and they think that's these guys should be in power. So it's sad. It's sad. We are in a sad moment.
Scary.
When I said radicalism, totalitarianism, I am not referring only to the far right wing. I think that the example of the Second War, the deal between Ribbentrop and Molotov, between Hitler and Stalin, that they maintain a deal of non-aggression till Hitler broke it, attacking Stalingrad. And they were very comfortable in that option. They did well as good friends. And I don't refer only the right of the left. I think they are very similar.
Yes, radicalism is dangerous, no matter where
The
it's
instruments are very similar. And our democracies, Trump, Bolsonaro, and many others in the world, use the same instruments of Goebbels and others like this.
Well, we certainly hope that the movie that you made and the story of Egon and Frieda Wolff will inspire people and open their eyes to what it is to live in a world like that. And all of the research that they have done should serve as information. I want to thank Director Pedro Gorski and executive producer, his stories, history consultant, and most importantly, the main character of the movie 3 Lives of Frieda Wolff for joining us today.